number one pass defense, Jamey says it does not matter. This is Stardom Sit. I'm Lauren Shehadi, Jamey Eisenberg, Dallas and Pittsburgh. There are very few instances in which you sit Tony Romo. One would be if he had the plague. Number two would be against that Steelers pass defense, but you say not the case.
Well, it depends on who else you have on your team. You know, Dave and I recently did our face-off article in this regard where I have, in one of my fantasy leagues, I have Kurt Warner and Tony Romo. I'm starting Warner over Romo because a better matchup. Warner's had a fantastic season. You could also make the same argument if you have an Aaron Rodgers or a Matt Ryan. And we mentioned those three guys because they were drafted as backups in the majority of leagues on CBSSports.com. But when you look at Romo going into this matchup, you know he's going to be throwing. He hasn't been sacked very much on the season, so that sort of negates the Pittsburgh pass rush. And they've been clicking the last couple of weeks when you look at Romo, Terrell Owens, Jason Witten coming off a 100-yard game showing that the ribs are fine, T.O. getting involved in the offense. I think even Roy Williams is a good play this week. So you look at what Romo has in store. You have to figure that he's going to be the first quarterback to pass for 300 yards against the Steelers. And we talked last week, about Matt Cassel having the bad game against the Steelers. Totally different quarterback. You're talking experience versus inexperience. Similar cast of characters in terms of good production around him, good players around him. But I think when you look at what Romo has in store, figure on a couple of turnovers, figure a couple of touchdowns. So if you could deal with the turnovers, look for a good game from him, just not as good as he's been the last couple of weeks.
But you don't like Marion Barber.
I don't like Marion Barber.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because there's a couple reasons. One, you look at what the Steelers have done in run defense. They are the #1 running defense. Marion Barber hasn't been running very well the last couple of weeks, and as we know, on Thanksgiving, dislocated his pinky toe. That can't be very fun. So I think you look at what the Cowboys have. We've gone from a broken pinky to a dislocated pinky toe for the Cowboys with Romo and now Barber. I think you'll see Barber lose some carries this week. I think that's why he's a sit. And I think you also, when you talk about just Barber in this matchup, I think that they're going to be behind a little bit. Pittsburgh has an opportunity to go ahead in this game, and I think that means the Cowboys will be throwing more than running.
Okay, let's get into your sitting running backs. And Clinton Portis, I noticed, held to 22 yards last week against the New York Giants. But you think enough people have enough good running backs on their fantasy team to sit Clinton Portis?
Yeah, I think you'll see when we get into our start running backs, guys like Peyton Hillis, Tim Hightower. These are guys that are on people's benches. You could start these guys over a guy like Clinton Portis. Clinton Portis is actually our sit of the week on CBSSports.com. Baltimore's run defense is tremendous. They've only really been bad in the one game against the Giants, still only allowing 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. Clinton Portis coming off the bad game against the Giants. Very similar type defense. They're going to be physical up front in the Ravens. And Dave Richard, actually a Miami Hurricane himself, he pointed this out, that when they face guys like Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, former Hurricanes themselves, they gear up for those Hurricane running backs. So Clinton Portis going to Baltimore. Baltimore's just too tough of a place to play. I know it's a close game. You call it the
Beltway battle.
Beltway battle, and I think you'll see that Portis just struggles this week. I don't like many of the Redskins at all.
Okay, but you mentioned Peyton Hillis, and you do like him. Is it because he's flexible? He can kind of be a hybrid tight end. He can do well. Do you think he's going to?
He's not playing that role yet, but that's good that you brought that up because that Mike Shanahan talked about how that next year Hillis is going to be playing that role. But as of now, he is just playing tailback, and he's playing great. The reason that Shanahan said that, I'm glad you brought that up, Lauren, is because that Shanahan said that Peyton Hillis has the best hands on the team. And you're talking about guys like Brandon Marshall, Eddie Royal, Tony Scheffler. Those are some good receivers. But, it seems like that Mike Shanahan has found another fantasy star with Peyton Hillis. He's just really getting it done right now, coming off the 100-yard game against the Jets. First player to go over 100 yards against the Jets this year, and the 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's our starter of the week this week. Great matchup against the Chiefs. They're going to ride him. I think Hillis is a great fantasy option in this game. You start him this week.
Okay, don't be alarmed by the performance by Matt Cassel against the Steelers. Even though they did stifle him, you think he'll bounce back against the Seahawks?
Now, not to say anything about Dave, but I think I said to sit Cassel last week. Dave said to start him. Is that right?
I played the 5th. I'm not getting into it.
I think you look at Matt Cassel in this game, bounce back game. Seattle has now fallen to last in pass defense this year. They did not play well against the Cowboys last week. Now, it is a cross-country trip for the Patriots. They are going to Seattle. Seattle is much better at home, obviously, than on the road. But I still think Cassel gets back to the spread offense for the Patriots. Wes Welker should be fine coming off that brutal hit from Ryan Clark in that Steelers game. And I think you look at Randy Moss. They're still trying to make a playoff push. They really pretty much have to win out at this point. So I think Cassel puts the team on his shoulders. They should be able to do whatever they want. I like Kevin Falk. I like Sammy Morris. I like pretty much all the Patriots in this game. And also I think you see Matt Hasselbeck on this list as well as a start quarterback. The Patriots, their secondary not very good also. So I think you look at Hasselbeck at home has a chance to play well. And I think if you notice the theme, it was Matt Ryan, Matt Hasselbeck, Matt Cassel. It's too bad Matt Brodsky.
I'm changing the theme. I'm talking about Phillip Rivers going against Oakland. LT has a great history. Rivers not the same.
Yeah, I think you look at Rivers in this matchup, just a bad history against Oakland. LT usually runs the show here against the Raiders, and I think that's the case again. Rivers has been hit or miss all month long. He's had a game with 2 touchdowns, followed it up with no touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, no touchdowns. If history holds the form, at least in the last 4 games, he would have 2 touchdowns this week, but I don't think that happens. Did not play well against Oakland earlier this year, and I think you'll see that happens again. I would sit him this week, and I think LT carries the Chargers offense.
Do you sit Marvin Harrison? Obviously, he's going to share touches with Anthony Gonzalez. What do you do there?
Yeah, the one thing about Anthony Gonzalez, Marvin Harrison, and Reggie Wayne, all 3 guys have sort of been up in the air. Dallas Clark's a great start this week for the Colts. The Bengals, terrible against tight ends. But I think you look at Marvin Harrison, when he's at home, that's when he's better. And obviously he's at home this week. The Bengals are losing defensive backs by the minute. They've just placed another guy on injured reserve. And I think you look at Peyton Manning, they're going to have their way with the Bengals this week. Again, Marvin Harrison at home, great start. This was on the road, be a little bit of a different story, but I think they bounced back from that poor game against the Browns.
Okay, it has no doubt been a tough season for Cleveland. Does that carry down to Braylon Edwards for the rest of the season?
Absolutely. I think you look at Braylon Edwards, you mentioned tough season for the Browns, tough season for him, and it gets worse because now Ken Dorsey is the starting quarterback for Cleveland. We know that's not a good thing because Brady Quinn couldn't get it done. Derek Anderson couldn't get it done. Edwards didn't help dropping the ball. And now Kellen Winslow is out for this game. He's got an ankle injury. So you got to figure that they're going to focus their defense on Braylon Edwards. Ken Dorsey not going to be able to get him the ball. I think Steve Hyden has an opportunity to play well here for the Browns because typically when you see a backup or a third-string quarterback, they go with guys who they're familiar with, which are the backups, people that they play with on the scout team. Hyden is obviously someone that Dorsey has played well with. But I just don't know if you could trust Braylon Edwards at this point. And on top of that, Tennessee's defense is just so good. So I think Cleveland on the road with this matchup, with Ken Dorsey at quarterback, sit pretty much all the Browns this week.
Okay, Edwards is just going to get too much coverage. If you need more coverage for your fantasy football team, you guys know where to turn. Fantasy Football Today, live every Sunday, 11 o'clock. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Lauren Shehadi. See you next time.